After the new letter from Attorney General William Barr tonight saying he intends to release some redacted version of the Mueller report in mid-April, if not sooner, we got this response from Chairman Adam Schiff, who is the head of the House Intelligence Committee. He says tonight, quote, Congress has asked for the entire Mueller report and underlying evidence by April 2nd. That deadline stands. In the meantime, Barr should seek court approval, just like in Watergate, to allow the release of grand jury material. Redactions are unacceptable. Release the report. Joining us now for the interview tonight is Congressman Adam Schiff of California, chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. Mr. Chairman, it's good to have you here tonight.
Thank you.
I know you've had a heck of a week being pilloried by the president and by your Republican colleagues in the House. Has this been a tough week for you?
You know, it started out as a tough week, but the encouragement around the country has been much more than I would have ever expected. So it ended much better than it started.
Yeah. I got to ask about this notice from the Attorney General tonight. I asked you to come on the show tonight and be here tonight because I knew you were going to be in New York, and I wanted to talk to you about what's happened over the course of this week. I didn't know we were going to get this notice from the Attorney General. I want to ask you about the unexpected nature of how he is handling this. It strikes me that the Attorney General is sort of freestyling here, sort of ad-libbing and making up what he's trying to portray as being expected of him in this moment. Do you know of anything that sort of governs or dictates the way the Attorney General is supposed to behave here that might explain his behavior?
No, I don't. And almost none of what he's doing is required by law or by the regulations. He certainly didn't need to provide that summary, non-summary. Presumably in a 400-page report by the counsel, the special counsel wrote his own summary. And there would have been nothing to preclude Bill Barr, if he wanted to give a forecast of what was to come, in releasing the summary. I have to think that Bob Mueller wrote his report knowing, because he could hear it all around him, that the public was going to demand to see it. So I think it likely, as you suggested, that there is a classified annex. When we introduce the intelligence bill every year, we have a classified annex, and we have a part we know is going to be made public. So nothing that Barr is doing is required except for the most minimal notification. And I thought the most problematic part of this summary, non-summary by Bill Barr was the suggestion that because Bob Mueller chose not to make a decision on indictment on obstruction of justice, that somehow he was compelled to. That was the flimsiest part of that memo, because, of course, he wasn't required to opine on that at all. And presumably, if Bob Mueller thought that that should be done, he would have done it himself. I think it far more likely that he expected that to go to Congress, that he didn't want to put his hand on the scale, because if he said that notwithstanding Justice Department policy against indicting a sitting president, that this president, if it weren't for that policy, I would say indict him, he would basically be saying, Congress, you need to impeach. And I think he decided, no, that question, like in Watergate, should go to the Congress. Bill Barr decided, no, that question should not go to Congress without my opinion. And I'll add this. It is even less likely that Bob Mueller, knowing that Bill Barr applied for the job by sending this unsolicited memo talking about how Bob Mueller's obstruction theory was bogus, what are the odds that Bob Mueller would say, yeah, let's let that guy decide about my 2 years of work product? And
I mean, and you've worked in the Justice Department yourself. You were an assistant U.S. attorney. You've been a federal prosecutor. My understanding of the way things work here, just as an observer, as a person who reads the news, is that it never works in the way where a prosecutor leading an investigation, considering potential criminal charges against somebody, assembles all the evidence and then punts. And then the Attorney General decides, without any recommendation from the prosecutor, whether or not those charges will be brought. I mean, is that...
You know, it is, I think, maybe not that simple, because in a normal circumstance where you have, let's say, a U.S. attorney or assistant U.S. attorney with a high-profile case in some part of the country, they're not conflicted. They weren't chosen because the Attorney General had a conflict or for some other reason. And so if it's of national significance, you might go to Main Justice, and they might weigh in terms of how it might reflect. Like if you were going to prosecute a journalist for not disclosing their sources, that decision is not likely to be made in a field office. It might go to Main Justice.
With a recommendation?
With a recommendation, yes. Yeah. But here, where The acting attorney general had opined bias, and the ethics lawyers said, you should recuse yourself. And Bill Barr would likely get the same advice from the ethics lawyers because he showed a bias. And the whole point is to avoid even the appearance of impropriety. He should not be the one putting his hand on the scale. That report, that Mueller report, should have already been produced to the Congress without his commentary. But clearly, you know, Bill Barr views his role in the unitary executive theory as being the hand of the president's Roy Cohn, there to do the president's bidding and his will. And he's doing it just as expected. So he was a brilliant hire for the White House, but the long-term consequence of this is that in the future, any president under investigation, if he doesn't like what the Attorney General is doing, will fire him and find another that's more suitable to his liking, because that's the precedent here. And as much as I blame Bill Barr for not recusing himself, I hold the Senate more responsible for confirming him without getting a commitment of recusal.
Is that precedent less dark if Congress figures out some way to release this report, even despite his efforts to apparently keep it in his drawer?
We're going to compel the release of this report. This report is all going to come out. And it's just going to reflect more poorly on the Attorney General if, when it does come out, and we look at the difference between what he redacted and what was under those redactions, it shows an effort to cover up or conceal either evidence of impropriety or evidence of a lack of morals or ethics or judgment, and that is shy of criminality, or in the case of obstruction of justice, is criminality. So we're going to compel this. This is a fight that is worth going to the mat on. Bill Barr, in his confirmation, said, I will be as transparent as possible, as much as the law or policy would allow. If he was true to those words, as Jerry Nadler said, he wouldn't be saying, I'm cutting all the grand jury material. He would be saying, Congress, I'm going to the court tomorrow to seek their permission to send it all to you. And I'll tell you this, the other areas that he wants to redact, information about classified information, we get that all the time. Information about pending investigative matters, they gave hundreds of thousands of pages that were both open investigation and investigatory material that reflected on the privacy of third parties. And if you don't think so, ask Peter Strzok or Lisa Page.